Next up, we have Gabrielle. She's a offensive security consultant at her workplace. I'm terrible with foreign languages. She can tell us more about Android application hacking. Hey, Gabrielle.
Hello, thank you for
Hi.
having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Please tell us more about Android application hacking.
Sure, let me share my screen. I have some slides ready for you.
Sounds good.
Okay, so thank you everyone for being here. I'm very happy to be here. This is such a great event. So I'm going to present myself a little. So my name is Gabrielle Botbol, and I am an offensive security consultant at Desjardins. And so that's how you pronounce it, Frenchy and everything.
Desjardins. Okay.
Desjardins.
Yeah.
And so besides my professional activity, I'm very involved in the cybersecurity community. I am a member of the board of directors of l'École Cyber, which is a French-Canadian school, and I am part of the advisory board of the largest cyber professional community on LinkedIn, which is called Canadian Cybersecurity Network. And finally, I am a blogger and a mentor to several associations that support and promote the place of women in cyber. And also, I've been recognized in the last 2 years with awards such as the Top 20 Women in Cybersecurity in Canada and Pen Test Ninja by Women's Society Cyber Jitsu. And today, so I'm first going to present how I trained myself to become a pen tester, and then I will briefly present what is pen test, and we will dive into how to set up a lab for Android and how to pen test an Android application. And after this, we will have some fun with a Kahoot quiz. And finally, I will present some useful resources about our subject. So let's go. So as I mentioned earlier, I am a blogger, but I will take some time to tell you about this blog and how it became a personal brand for me. So for the record, I studied literature to become an actress, but I've always been passionate about computers. And 10 years ago, I turned this passion into a job by becoming an application security developer. So even if I liked this job very much, I was morally torn as for the security of the applications I was delivering to the customer, because at the time, as a developer, you were not really responsible for the security of the app. That's how it was. And so that's why I started to get interested in cybersecurity, and I discovered pen testing. And for practical and economical reasons, I trained myself to become a pen tester, and I documented this in a blog. And so the goal of this blog was to get hired as a pen tester. So it's true that it was a risk because it was, outside of the traditional model, but I'd say that risk is part of every business anyway. So to build my program, I relied on an education science concept called apprenance. So you can see the definition on the screen. And so I drew inspiration from academic programs, and I compared them with skills mentioned in job postings. And so this concept, inspired by lifelong learning, allowed me to create a path in 6 steps, which are CTF, conferences, tutorials, internships, summer school, and volunteering. So the CTF were to learn by doing, conferences to have different points of view and approach cybersecurity from all angles, MOOCs and tutorial to support the practice of CTF with theory, and summer schools to have a contact with academic and professional world and meet experts in the field, and volunteering to meet other cybersecurity enthusiasts, and finally an internship to put all this learning into practice. And to this program, I added an analysis grid listing the skills that I obtained from my previous positions, like and so that would be applicable to the cybersecurity field. So for example, when I was an actress, I learned how to speak in public, and I developed my concentration and my self-control. So this is completely transferable in the cybersecurity field. Okay, so what is pen test? You can see a definition on my screen. And to go in more detail, we can say that a pen test allows us to identify flaws at the application layer, networks, and system, as well as the possibilities of compromising physical security barriers. So Android app pen test, along with mobile pen test, is a type of pen test that is part of the list we usually provide as pen testers. And most of pen testers are generalists. They provide, for example, network, Wi-Fi, and web pen test, but some like to specialize in pen test like mobile and cloud and so many others. But today I'm going to talk about Android app pen test. And so Android is a mobile operating system based on a modified version of the Linux kernel, and it is developed by Google. And so the most used language for Android app is Java. But since 2019, the official language is Kotlin. And so other than those, you can use other language like C++ or Python, for example, but they would not be fully supported. Also, it's worth mentioning that Kotlin is a simplified version of Java. So now that this is cleared up, I'm going to dive into explaining the pen test of an Android app. So for Android app, pen test and mobile pen test in general, the lab installation part is it's way bigger than for other types of pen test. And so today we are going to see how to set up a lab and how to pen test an app. So first you have to plan with the customer, define the legal matters and everything. So this is the planning phase. And also, as usual, like in every pen test, there is a reconnaissance phase. And in our case, it would involve having a look at the information you can get on the app with Google Play, maybe doing some reconnaissance on the company of the customer and so on. Then we have a static analysis. So this is when we will have a look at the code and check for specific element there that could disclose information or that could be vulnerable to something. And then we have the dynamic analysis, and we will intercept traffic and look for vulnerabilities this way. And finally, we will have to make a report to present and explain findings, and I will explain the last three steps more in detail. So in order to set up your lab, you will need the tools that you see on the screen. So Jadix is a tool that will decompile the code of the app, and you will then be able to analyze it. ADB is the command line tool that will let you interact with a device or a virtual machine. And Android Studio will provide you a proper VM to interact with it. And Burp Suite will be able to intercept request and response. So the setup you see here is made for Ubuntu, but you can also check the resources at the end of the matrix for information with other systems. And so in order to install Jadix, you need to have Java installed, and then you can type this command that you see on the screen, and this one will actually launch Jadix. And for ADB, you can use the command on the screen as well to do the installation. And for Android Studio and Burp Suite, it's pretty straightforward. You just have to go to the link and download and install depending on your OS system. So this is a little video to show you how to set up the emulator. I'm just going to make sure that the quality is top and put it in full screen. Okay, so you have to go to Android Device Manager and then create a virtual device. You can choose any device you want. I personally chose the Nexus 5 for this demo. And then you have to go to 86 images. And you select, so you have to check the API level you need for the application, and then you can select something accordingly, and then you can just rename it, and then you're good to go. Just finish it, and so it's going to create the virtual machine, and then you can just launch it by clicking on the green button here, and it will show up on the screen, and it will take some time to load. I'm just gonna speed that up a little because it's taking a while, and after you're going to be welcomed by this screen and you will be good to go. Okay. So, sorry. So how to configure Burp? So this is another video. Let me just pause a little to check the quality again. And I'm going to split it. Perfect. So you have to go to the proxy tab and to import and export CA certificate. And then you just have to write cert.cer. Be careful with the extension here. We don't want DER, we want CER for this. And then you just have to save it. And you take, it's as easy as a drag and drop to put it on the virtual device. And then you have to go to settings, security, and install from SD card. It's in the internal storage download. You just give it a name, you click OK, but it's going to ask you to set up a lock screen pin, so you just need to do so using a very secure password, as you can see.
The best password.
And that's it. Burp is installed, and now you have to set up the proxy so that you can direct the network, the request to Burp, so that you can actually intercept them. And so you should have this. And then now you have to go to the settings in the virtual machine. And so it's already done, but I'm just going to show you here because you don't forget to click on apply, because I got caught a little and I forgot and it was not working, but it was just because I did not click on apply. And we can check, and the traffic is actually intercepted, so it's working. And when we will launch the app, it's going to be working as well. So the app I used for the example you're going to see just after is PIVA, which means purposefully insecure and vulnerable Android application, which is way better when you have a better accent when you say it. The URL you get to get it is on the screen here. And so before I go on with the example, I have to stress out that you must always have the authorization of the owner of an app to test. Otherwise, it's illegal. Okay. So for the static analysis, we have to check Android manifest.xml and strings.xml. And we can also enumerate database. So you can find some tools on GitHub that can help you for this purpose. And of course, we need to check for sensitive data. So I'm going to show some example in the Android manifest file now. So this file is the place where the developers will describe essential information about the app. And this will be used to mention the app package name, the component of the app, the permissions, and the hardware and software the app needs. So it's also useful for us to check which API we need to use in our lab to test the application by having a look at what is called the min SDK version flag. And on the screen, you can see the list of all the permissions that are required on Piva. And as the goal of the permission is to protect the privacy of the user, you might see some permission here that should not be allowed, but it really depends, of course, on the purpose of the application. But let's say that if we were testing a social media app, there would be no need to record the audio. So this is typically something you should mention in a report. And so you can also see a link here that will give you a resource to all the permission you can specify here. So we have the flag allow backup that could allow an attacker to take the backup of the app data with ADB. And so it would be safer to put it as false. And also, as mentioned in the OWASP documentation, you have a link on the screen if you want to check it out. If the attribute is not set up, it is enabled by default. And so in our example on Piva, it is set to true. And so debuggable, so this flag will mention if the app can be debugged, so it should be set to false. Otherwise, an attacker could use this to access the app data. So sometimes what happens is that the customer will give you the developer version of the application. So this flag will, of course, be set to true. But what I usually do in this case is that I mention it as informational, as a reminder for the customer to make sure that they will change this when they will deliver the app in production. So in our example in Piva, it is set up to true. And so it's also worth checking in the manifest which activities are exportable. So the activities are screens of the apps, and depending on the app, the activity, like some of them should not be exportable, because this means that they could be accessed from the outside of the application. So we will need to check if these specific exportable activities disclose sensitive data. And in our example, 3 activities are exportable, and you can see this on the screen. So you have Android exported equals true. So for the static analysis, other than the Android manifest, it is also worth checking the strings.xml file. And what is useful is also to look up for secret keys, credential, comments, URLs, IP address, private keys, any sensitive information that should not be in the code. And with Jadix GUI, you can also use the global search with the little one here to look up for specific strings, like, for example, API, API key, password, anything that that would be sensitive if it would show up. And so to do this, you can use the global search here, and just search for the text and see what results you will have to show up. So for the enumeration that I mentioned quickly earlier, we can try to enumerate database for public resources in the cloud also, using the 2 tools you see on the screen here. And so sometimes you could find an AWS secret key in the manifest. Yeah, should not happen, but sometimes it could happen. So you could try to use it to access the resources on AWS. And this is definitely something that would be worth mentioning on the report. So about the dynamic analysis. So this is the part where you will intercept traffic with burp and analyze it. So during this phase, you can check for tab jacking. So it's like click jacking, but for mobile app. You can also check if you are able to capture screens that contain sensitive data. And of course, you can check the OWASP top 10 vulnerabilities. And so I'm going to show you an example of vulnerability that we can find during static analysis, dynamic analysis, sorry. So this is an example with Piva again, and it's a video example. I'm just going to pause it again, put the quality and the speed. Okay, so we go to Piva and we connect using our credential, and then we just go So we are going to the About page, but we, just for the sake of the example, we are going to pretend that this is a page that discloses sensitive information, like say for, if it were a banking app, it would be like a profile app with the credit card number, for instance. Okay, so I'm able to go back to the application, and I'm definitely should not be able to see anything here. This should be blank if it were a sensitive screen. And I should have been logged out if it were a banking app. So you can also use automatic tool for analysis as with any other pen test. It can be useful if you want to gain some time. However, as usual, it does not replace your eyes and brain. And you know, we can only relate on those. We need other tools, and other, like as I said, our analysis, our human analysis on this. So this means that you need to verify every finding to avoid false positive, and also check for other things that an automatic tool could not detect. So these two tools you see on the screen are pretty convenient. MobSF will conduct a complete scan, and it is an automation for the static analysis step, and it will check the permission, the encryption of the traffic, possible buffer overflows, hard-coded secret, and other useful elements. And Quark is a tool capable of finding common security vulnerabilities in an Android application. And it can also create proof of concept. For instance, you can use it for tabjacking evidence. So now that we have seen the process with example of vulnerabilities, I'm going to explain how to report them. So here is on the screen the usual structure of any pen test report. So you have the executive summary. So it's the part that is addressed to the executive of the company, and they will have to read the report. So it needs to be high-level explanations with no technical details, and it contains a global posture that explains why the finding and attack combination could impact the company. The vulnerability report will have all the elements here you see on the screen. You can also use this part of the methodology for a bug bounty report. So you have the severity, and so it is usually in one word: low, medium, high, or critical. You have the score, so you can use a OWASP risk rating or CVS score, and you have a specific calculator for them. And you have the affected item, a description, which is a detailed explanation with technical details on how the flow can be reproduced. Remediation, which is an explanation on how to correct it, and then evidence. So this usually is a screen capture or request response as evidence of the explanation you are able to conduct. And during the attack phase, you should have taken as many notes as possible, along with screenshots and request response from burp, or anything useful to prove the vulnerabilities and to allow the person who will read your report to reproduce them in order to correct them. So this is an example. We can use the vulnerability I mentioned in the dynamic analysis part. So as you can see, we have a title for the vulnerability, we have a severity and the CVSS score, and we have a description with resources that provides more detailed explanations on the vulnerability. And so we have a remediation. So here, for example, we recommend to use the flag secure. And finally, we have a screen of this behavior as an evidence. So this is the screen we had earlier. And when you have sensitive information in a screenshot and that you have to put it in the report, you need to hide them. So if we had a credit card number here, we would have to put a black square instead of the number in the screenshot. Okay, so I see that we don't have a lot of time. Do you still want to do the Kahoot quiz, or I can go just straight to the resources and give you the resources? What do you think, Joy?
I That's a tough one. We might need to go to the resources slide, but if you wanted to just touch on the next one, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. I can go to the resources straight away. It's okay. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I'm going to share all of these resources also on Discord, so that
Okay.
speed up the process a little. Perfect.
Awesome.
So
Thank you for your flexibility.
oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
So this is the resources to practice. So you can you have all the vulnerable apps to practice on. So those two are list, and you have Exploit Me, which is an Android lab, and a track on Hack the Box that is an introduction to Android exploitation, which is very, very cool. And you have courses, and I put the TCM course here because it's really worth it, and it also covers iOS. So if you have some cash to spend, it's definitely worth it. But you also have this course on HackerOne, which is very, very, very good. And you have those amazing resources on NahamSec and a cool Notion site about mobile. And here are some good reads, including the reference that you can use for your report, which is OWASP MSTG. And some disclosed reports. I find it very useful to read other people's reports on vulnerabilities, because you definitely learn a lot from doing this. And another another resource from NahamSec with a list of tools for mobile hacking, Quark that I mentioned earlier, and a good tutorial that will show different how to use how to set it up and how to use it, and finally MobSF. And the last slide is some resources to go further, because I did not cover SSL pinning, because most of the time the customer will give you an app with certificate pinning disabled. But it can happen that this is part of the mandate and that you have to disable certificate pinning on your own. So here are some resources on what it is and how to disable it. So that's it for now, Joyce.
No, it's just all good stuff. I'm like hooked. I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. Well, I do appreciate your time, Gabrielle. Thank you so much for all of this. And I don't speak French. So if I said anything like au revoir, it would not be good for anyone. So
it's okay. It's very nice that you're a great host, and I was very happy to be here. Like, the event is very, very cool. I had a lot of fun yesterday evening.
yeah.
So
Good. Good. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for participating.
thanks. Have a great day.
Okay, bye.